So yesterday was in its way fun, upbeat, compelling. I don't know, and you come to me sometimes with this, where we'll start and say, "I need to reflect how I'm a mood," and maybe it was after that, and maybe it was coming into direct contact with the level of actual distress that the country really is in, and maybe it was watching everything unfold yesterday with this bogus posturing that is the Biden executive order. And maybe it's watching another press conference where it seems like he is barely able to even function. And maybe it's this morning's Wall Street Journal story about where even behind closed doors, he is not the sharp-witted genius that people make him out to be. So I still like our chances. I remain upbeat. I'm forever prayerful and optimistic. And it's not like I go through days blithely unfamiliar with the crises of our times. But, Mike, there's something about this week. There's something really literally about yesterday. It just started to layer upon layer upon layer. His incompetence, his senility, our wreckage of an economy, our porous borders, our culture under attack, the race wars that he is trying to start. And I mean that. Going into a black university and saying, it's almost like we're putting you back in chains again. These people hate you. The betrayal of Israel, marching us into a nuclear conflict with Russia because of his Ukraine obsessions. This is as bad. You and I have been alive a little while. It is not hyper. This is as bad as things have ever been in my life.
You know, Janine Pirro said something this week that made such sense to me. She said Democrats caused over $2 billion in damages when they rioted and looted and burned things in the streets when they didn't get their way in 2020. Yeah. Trump just raised $200 million peacefully. Notice the difference? Yeah. There we are. I mean, we are in as bad a place as we've ever been. And I share that with you, obviously. And that's why I feel the way I feel about a nation in distress. I mean, we got a guy now who transparently and comically stumbles up to a podium and pretends he's concerned about the border. Yeah. 3.5 years, he has said, I've done all I can do. I'm not doing anymore. I can't. He dismantled Trump's actions that now he's taking. He spent 3.5 years decimating Trump's orders to secure the border, and now because the election is 5 months away, he's standing there in front of a couple of stupid signs from Kinko's that says securing our border in the background. Securing our border. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, a guy from Venezuela who was staying in a taxpayer-funded hotel room in New York City shot and could have killed 2 New York City cops. A guy from Venezuela who just waltzed through Eagles Pass, just waltzed in, said, here I am, I claim asylum. And, of course, because of the Democrats' goofy policies, here we are, come on in, and he winds up shooting 2 cops. And incidentally, real nice guy. Prior to that, he was riding up and down on a moped, attacking other innocent, people in the streets of Manhattan. I really do think America's had enough, Mark, and we got to stay the course. I don't know what this looks like on July 11th when Mershon sentences him. I cannot envision a scenario where they won't send him to jail. I really can't. I know people say, oh, that's unlikely. Baloney. Just ask the CFO of the Trump organization. He's 77 years old. They sent him 5 months to jail. Just ask who else? I mean, Peter Navarro. Look at all these men who have never done they don't have a traffic ticket to their name. And Mershon has sentenced them to of course he's going to put him in jail. And then what happens? Then what's going to happen to this country? You say he wins in a landslide.
Well, that seems like a reaction that would, if you extrapolate out from what we've seen so far as he has been persecuted and prosecuted, how the support for him has grown. If they really do sentence him to jail, and I'm still going to go with that Andy McCarthy notch scenario where Mershon sentences him so Mershon can get the high fives in the island of Manhattan, but he doesn't actually serve. He doesn't actually.
How does he not go?
There's so many legal things, pause
appeal
buttons
and everything, stayed on appeal.
And pauses. Yeah. A ton of people have been actually sentenced, but they go, okay, the appeal is in the pipeline. If we lose the appeal, then you got to serve the time.
Well, let's go back to the chapter about how bad things are and how bad things have gotten. I spent a good deal of the show yesterday talking about Benny Thompson. Now, along with Liz Cheney, Benny Thompson and Liz Cheney co-chaired this ridiculous January 6th committee, the select committee, where they wouldn't let any Republicans on the committee. It was handpicked. They picked a couple of squishy Trump-hating Republicans. The whole thing was a sham, right? And I spent a great deal of time analyzing Benny Thompson's efforts to strip Trump of his Secret Service protection. Because, Mark, you can't come up to any other conclusion other than they want him killed.
They're okay with him dying. Yep.
They want him dying. They want him to be killed. There's no other way to describe. I mean, I wonder if any reporter has had the gumption to say to Benny Thompson with his, and have you seen the legislation that he has sponsored? It's this, it's called Disgraced. And it's this long, this acronym of, but it's disgraced because after all, Trump's disgraced and he shouldn't deserve Secret Service protection. But when you realize they want their political rival killed, you know how bad things are. Now, let's go to Liz Cheney, another reprehensible, despicable character. Just the News is now reporting. They got their hands on reporting that the January 6th committee, headed by Liz Cheney and Benny Thompson, rebuffed repeated efforts from a Secret Service agent to refute the false story by book writer Cassidy Hutchinson.
Oh, about grabbing for the wheel?
Alleging that Trump grabbed the wheel in the limousine during the Capitol riots.
From the back seat. It's like, what? Yep.
Well, of course, it was a total lie, and she's just a nut. And here's the transcript of the driver's testimony that contained express objections and saying over and over, let him testify. You know what they did? They slow walked it. Liz Cheney and the committee clearly knew that Cassidy Hutchinson's account was debunked by the very driver who allegedly struggled with Trump, yet they allowed the media to report the incident for months while rebuffing the requests of the driver to testify. Mark, these are scoundrels. And this is why Axios writes about one big thing behind the curtain, MAGA's plan. If Trump wins in November, and I'm really, really dying to know how you feel about this, according to Axios, MAGA world and people like Steve Bannon and others are saying, of course, Alvin Bragg should be investigated, should be prosecuted, and even jailed. There needs to be, if Trump wins, top supporters are going to push Trump to investigate and prosecute his tormentors. What say you, Mark Davis?
Bring it on. But unlike the Democrats and unlike the state of New York, I want it brought on with an eye toward obeying the law, identifying actual crimes. I don't know if here's somebody else who I don't think we'll ever see in jail, Alvin Bragg. But is it possible some sanction, some disbarment, some at least public airing of his sins is a good idea? It absolutely is.
There has to be accountability.
And that's
there
what
has
these
to be
Democrats say.
accountability.
If Trump wins, the revenge, he's coming after you're darn right he's coming after him, because they've come after him, and there will be an accounting and there will be a reckoning. Having you tell those stories about Liz Cheney, I've said three things about Trump hatred. It makes nice people mean. It makes smart people stupid. It makes funny people unfunny. Maybe I've left out the most important thing. It makes principled people, it makes good people bad. It literally to their core. It rots you to the core. I used to love Liz Cheney. I mean, there was first woman president buzz for her coming out of my mouth 10 years ago. But what Trump hatred has done to her, it's
your rule. As usual, you're so spot on. I mean, I've had personal experience with this with people in my life who are good, kind, decent people, and you're right, they become mean.
It rots them.
There's a meanness to them. There's people who are spiritual, who preach grace, have zero grace to any. Listen, I'm not going to sit around and say that I worship Donald Trump and I think he's a perfect man. He's a deeply flawed individual, frankly, as am I. As are you. We all are. We have flaws. We have made mistakes in our lives. But this is a guy who's put it all on the line, who has thrown away his life of comfort and leisure and luxury to fight for his country. And most people see it, but you're right. There is your formula is positively brilliant. There is just something about it. And yesterday, there's Merrick Garland refusing in front of that committee to confirm the communication that the Justice Department had with Alvin Bragg's office, with Fannie Willis's office. The reason he's refusing is because, of course, there was communication and coordination. Mark, this would be real simple. If they didn't coordinate anything, that's what he'd say. He'd say, I'll turn everything over.
Answer the question. Just answer the question.
All you got to do is answer it. But the reason he won't answer it, and the reason he tap danced, we know what happened. Alvin Bragg was, in fact, coordinating with the justice. This is Biden's prosecution. This is Biden's effort to put his political rival in jail or worse.
You know what you did 60 seconds ago? You identified something again. It's mutual admiration, odd couple. The genius you brought just on the fly, extemporaneously. You said, in identifying the selflessness of Donald Trump, gave up his life of privilege and luxury and economic largesse in order to get in and do the grunt work and put his nose to the grindstone to save this country. And yet, what do people say? They say it 500 times a day. And it's sort of commonly offered up to conservatives, especially the strong, bold conservatives. Colin Allred's trying it with Ted Cruz. It's all about him. He doesn't believe in the people. He doesn't work for the people. It's not about we. It's all about me. Donald Trump's just in it for himself. If he were just in it for himself, he never would have run for president. One of the reasons I will say this, love him and thank him and are grateful for him is it's not just the policies. President DeSantis could give us good policies. His level of commitment and energy and drive to save this country will endear me to him forever.
Amen. I mean, did you think he's not smart enough to recognize that they all loved him until he ran for president? They only hated him when he ran for president. He was the toast of the town. Look at the Comedy Central roast where they even, all of them lined up and said, hey, maybe you should even be president. They loved this guy. Rappers, boxers, UFC, the whole Hollywood, everybody loved the guy. The Apprentice, oh, what a hit show. But he knows that it's worth it. He told a reporter the other day, somebody from Fox News, hey, if I got to go to jail, I got to go to jail. And I believe him. I think he's saying, you know what? I'll do that for America because in the long run, we're going to make this country great again. And that's what the Trump haters don't understand. And that's so be it. But here we go again. I feel
better than I did 15 minutes ago. It's the power of Mike Gallagher.
You and me both, my brother. I appreciate it.